And yes, I'm adding everybody.
All right,
Cool.
we
We can just
second
wait for
word.
another 1 minute and we can get started.
Cool. Nick from Florida, the Philippines. Where are you from? Well, that's we've got Boston, if I'm right. Boston, with the horrible American accent that I have. We've got Bangalore, which is the Silicon Valley of India. We've got Sydney, which is just another city in Sydney in Australia with poor internet access. So let's go. Uh, Also, we like keeping the chat active and available. This one is hosted by Swapnil and Jesse, so I'm gonna be the one running. Of course, I'm watching maps, my friend. Um, I we are gonna ask you to drop in your questions over here, and we'll maintain it. Along with that, any further questions you've got, we've got a Slack channel that we. So, Swapnil, do you want to run the question directly to Slack, or are we okay to drop it in the
So
chat?
what we so okay, we're gonna go through the webinar with Jesse first. We're gonna have a thread for the questions. We're gonna
Cool.
have the last 5 to 10 minutes for a few people to ask
Question.
their questions. What I would also request is don't flood the chat with questions. Right. We're going to give you a dedicated amount of time to ask your questions to Jesse. And in case any of you are not able to, we're going to create a separate thread on Slack for your questions to get answered. So don't worry,
Cool.
you're going to get all the answers that you need, right?
Sí, pero no
With
está la cámara activa.
who
Just mute
yeah,
yourself, please.
yes.
Thank you. All right. I think we're good. We got 150. Let's kick off.
Let's kick off. Awesome. So, Jesse, before we get started, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and Lead Magic for that matter?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, Swapno V, for setting this up. Jesse Ouellette here, founder of Lead Magic, helping companies get back to the primary inbox. We are helping a lot of companies right now with our data enrichment, email enrichment, validation, some other things we're doing there. And we also have a visitor identification for anonymous visitor identification for companies, and that's what we're doing. We've been a long time customer. Been very happy with working with the team over there. Some of our specialty has been just really helping some of the larger customers of Smartlead scale. We're not really doing any of the real agency stuff, but we're doing more like helping different agencies that we know or that are in the network here that are sort of recommended to us from V, and that's what we're working on right now.
Awesome. Cool. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into it and let's answer the questions for people, right? So,
Yep.
let's start with email deliverability, right? Because that's one of the core agendas here. What I want to understand from you, Jesse, is could you explain to us what are some of the key factors that influence deliverability, right? And also probably just share some of your own experiences which you have utilized in terms of optimizing for email deliverability.
Yeah, the first thing is don't panic, and it's probably not Smartlead's fault. Those are like the two things that I like to start out with people, because there's always, for some reason, the person who's sending the emails is always getting the blame first. I think we need to, everybody probably needs to take a step back on, maybe even me too, right? I'll do the same stuff, but just take a step back on Smartlead. A lot of the times there's something else going on with a lot of email delivery right now. And, where I'm seeing a lot of people go is a lot of people are looking for ways to get around some of these disconnects are the real problem right now, or lockouts of the account. And this is something that's been really happening a lot, where you've got to basically go in and you got to do some of this two-factor stuff, the stuff that kind of your accounts will get locked out. It's really annoying. You sort of need another team. And really what that is a result of, it's a direct result of people manually reporting you as spam is really what it is. So you don't know that. You'll never know that. And nobody really knows what email delivery, the deliverability of these emails, like they don't really know. Nobody really knows for sure. Right. So I know there's a lot of gurus on LinkedIn that will tell you like they're like, oh, you do this, you do that. Nobody really knows, right? Not even me, right? I don't even know. It's really just a numbers game of like they have a model that is being scored every day. Things change every day. You've got to be prepared for that, and that's sort of what you're taking on if you're sending emails right now. So hopefully that answers it. But like it's really that not freaking out. Let's think about the things we're doing that could be causing a problem that are generating manual reports, and why aren't we getting replies, right? Like, what's causing us not to get as many replies? How do we increase the number of replies? Like, what are the things we can do to get higher numbers? Even if they're a little bit negative, it's still better than not getting replies. So anyways, I'll stop there. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yep. So okay, with respect, so just building on that, on top of that question, then, so when you say, like, probably it's something to do with how you are setting up your emails, right? Uh, what are some factors that could help people understand where to begin that journey to optimizing it, right? For
Yep.
example, let's say if I've launched a campaign, I'm not getting the right numbers or the numbers that I had expected, right? What should be my first step into debugging what could be going wrong?
So one of the things I'll talk about today is, and might not have thought about it this way, is this concept of the way that you're, everything you're doing, the concept of like, the human factor of how you're setting things up, how you're sending. And what I want to talk about a little bit is, like, if you think about what's happening right now, right? Let's say you're just starting out with Smartlead, you go set up 10 inboxes. You get the 10 inboxes set up, and then you're racist. Well, let's think about what you did in that pattern, right? You set up a new org, you set up the way, even if you were incognito, this browser. So they've got it, you warm up and send a bunch of, AI generated messages. And then all of a sudden you're now sending messages that are getting marked as complaint. I mean, listen, that pattern is pretty obvious to Google, right? Like, that's the type of thing they're looking for, right? Or Microsoft, right? And they're looking for this pattern. It's pretty easy to spot. Like, don't, you're not being that sneaky, right? Like, you're walking through, it's like coming home late at night and you've had a few too many drinks out in the town, and you haven't really established your grounding yet. Maybe you're getting caught by your wife or whatever, or, husband, whatever. But it's just one of those things. Like, you really have to think about that. Like, what are you doing? You're setting up 10 emails. Okay, great. Are you using the same browser? Okay, well, are you using the same, is it your VA logging in 4 times to every one of them? Like, you've got to really think about that. And, like, if you're a US based person and now your VA is in India, or maybe they're in the Philippines or other places, or wherever, Australia, it's just that just triggers a whole nother set of machine learning models that are going to start to trigger and go off on your systems, right? And if you start out there and then you get marked as complaint, I mean, that model has already been built to prevent you from doing that, right? Like, they see it. It's going to happen faster, and it's going to get better, and they're going to get a lot better, right? Because they're constantly learning and they're constantly doing that. It's sort of your choice, right? Like, you can do it in a way where it's sort of like how any other company would do it, as they were hiring new employees and bringing in new inboxes. That's probably the way you want to do it. Not the way that you're doing it, where you're sending it out to your VAs and then they're logging in with every VPN in every, country. And it's just, you're going to really have to think about how you're operating those systems now.
Got it.
Can I just jump in very quickly?
Yeah.
So what do you think is the fix over here, Jesse? What do you think we should be doing?
There's a couple of ways to do it. So there's obviously, when you're setting up these accounts, right? If you're setting up general accounts, there's a couple of things going on right now that I'm seeing some trends, just some high level trends. There's a lot of different companies that are providing inboxes of some sort, where they're kind of like, the notion of it is like, hey, use our inboxes. They're $1 a piece, or $3, $5, or whatever, but maybe a little bit lower than you would get. But maybe, just, how you had to set those up and you're using those might be, you don't know if it's a reseller of a Gmail account, right? Maybe their reputation is bad, right? Because they're now, so your reputation sort of precedes you. It's like, if you get introduced by, if I get introduced by, the CEO or a VC for, somebody, partner at a VC, that's better. It's really who you're getting introduced by. And when you're coming into these platforms and you're just starting to send, you're kind of coming into a network that is established, that has rules. And, the great thing about email is it's an internet protocol. It's not like the web, right? It's not like a social media website. It's a network protocol, right? It's not on the same protocol as the World Wide Web, right? HTTP. It's on a different protocol, SMTP and IMAP and all that pop. But basically, if you really think about it, what's happening is all of these systems that you have, you need to make sure that you're looking at, if you're going on and you're not, it doesn't look like a regular employee, and you're scaling up 1,000 inboxes, you've got to do it in a different way. You're going to have to start thinking about, how do I do multiple browsers? How do I use proxies? How do I make sure that the proxies are the right proxies? There's things like that that are going to start to happen that you're going to probably need to take advantage of to keep your deliverability high.
God, that's really interesting way to look at it, right? So
Yep.
this is a question that we've been asked on our Slack channel multiple times, and I think this is something that people want answers to. Is, in an ideal scenario, right? Let's say everything is working in your favor. Uh, what would an ideal email infra setup look like to achieve this kind of deliverability?
So I think what you got to look at is, you'd probably be on, so first of all, you'd be on inboxes you own, right? I think one of the problems that a lot of people have is when they have to go to support, they're going to the reseller or something like that.
Yeah.
So if you're going to maintain this, you're going to have direct access to the support team, right? Now, maybe they have an enterprise agreement. There probably is an exception there where they probably have an enterprise agreement. There's some companies that have negotiated those types of things, but where it's a real problem right now is when people have really low cost inboxes, and then they sort of like are now beholden to that reseller or whatever. And look, some of these resellers, Google knows that some of them are supporting this type of work, and you got to just be very careful. So the ideal scenario would be, you know, you don't always need, you got to look at what you're trying to do. Do you really need 5,000 inboxes? Now, trust me, I'm all about the cannons and throwing out some emails, but you really have to start to think about, like, hey, if I have this footprint, like, what's it going to look like? Does this client really need, I would say you're looking at 50 emails a day per inbox and 100 per domain, right? So maybe 2 inboxes per domain. I'm sure there's people who could say a little bit more, but really a lot of it comes down to how many emails you're sending to the same person, really, because that's where there's tension, right? You're trying to get a response, but you're not trying to get a block. So the audience matters there, right? Certain audiences are a little bit more prone to hitting report as spam. That's what you're trying to solve for. So your problem that you're trying to solve for is not getting reported as spam, right? That's the challenge that you have. So you're trying to land in the primary inbox, and then you're trying to have it so that person replies. That would be the ideal situation, with hopefully a positive reply. But if it's negative, it's probably okay. And you're trying to get as many of those, because even the negatives sort of keep you going, right? There's an engagement factor there. They see that they're not worried about when they reply, especially if it's some of their bigger customers or their bigger companies that are using their platform. And they get to see the network effect, right? They get to see who you're emailing. They have a lot of signals that get triggered every time somebody looks at the email, and every time I wouldn't say open, let's not talk about open rate, that's a whole other world. But I would say that you'd want to look at it from when that person's on Google and reading your email in their inbox, and then they send you a reply, that's a relatively positive response for them. They're looking for the good and bad. You don't show up for a webinar one week, you could get on the bad side, right? You show up and you bring even bigger audience, you get on the good side, right? There's things in life that you do, and that's the way it is. And you got to think about that. More replies are better right now.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
keep it low, and you don't need to send more than you'll have clients who are like, I just want to send a, and by the way, that's a short run too, because they'll churn just as fast as you got them. So
Yep, absolutely. And that's spot on. Awesome. So while we've covered some aspects of deliverability, right? The next step, once a user has achieved deliverability, once they've set up their infrastructure, once they've started sending emails, is to handle the scale, right? Which is for them to understand how do they go from, let's say, sending 1,000, 10,000 emails to now increasing that scale to like 50, 60,000, which would ultimately impact their business and grow their revenue. And that is exactly where automation kicks in, right? So
Yep.
I would want to understand from you as to what are like, firstly, how crucial is automation in this process, right? According to you, and what would be some factors that a company, or let's say an individual who is running emails, would need to consider to, like, go back and say, hey, we need automation for our business, we need to get this set up, we need to start driving this so that we can send more emails at scale and drive more revenue for our business.
Yep, it's a great question. So you can really automate the whole process on Google or Microsoft. There's sort of maybe one step you could probably argue that you can't. That would be a violation of the terms and services of the contract with your Google account. But it's really that DKIM step, right? You're not really supposed to log in, and that's the only part that isn't out there that you're really supposed to. Now you can do it with browser automation. You can clearly do anything, right? Like, we're building robots these days, right? Like, you do whatever you want, but everything else is available through the API. So you're able to set up every other record, everything there. We like to standardize on the same DNS setup. So the best DNS providers we've found for at least for this type of work, we found Cloudflare to be probably the best. There's probably two: DN Simple and Cloudflare. GoDaddy is okay. A little slow on the updating. It seems a little slow. Their support sucks, and not that Cloudflare's is any better, but their APIs are so great, and like, they just have like a really good way to set up the biggest thing about Cloudflare that we found, and this is something I don't even really talk about much. It's really those rules, those page rules. I don't know if anybody's using those, but there's some things you can do with those where, cold email drives a ton of traffic to a website. It also drives a ton of organic searches. So what it'll do, you could point this out to your clients, you'll start to see a big hike in the amount of traffic they're getting on their website. And it's good traffic too, because it's traffic that they're going to go out and search. And if you can hone in on that, you can actually show it. I mean, I had a couple of clients that, back a little while ago, we were sending a lot for them, and they were their SEO was going sky high, right? Because you think about it, the first thing you do when you get an email, you're going to go look them up on Google, right? And that helps a lot. And then also those page rules, when you forward them in, if there's some strategies of what you could do with those page rules, right? You could set up a Cloudflare worker, and you could actually have it run the pixel, their Facebook pixel or their LinkedIn pixel through that worker. So if you want to do some tracking, it's nice because it does help you drive some of that audience that you're trying to get. And they might unsubscribe from an email, but maybe they saw your Facebook ad and you've already got them now in another. You've now got them as an inbound lead because they saw your ad. They were just upset when they saw your email. They didn't really understand what you did. So like, those are some things that we've done that I don't think a lot of firms have done. You can redirect those domains just about anywhere, right? So that's, if you're really good, you can do some really good stuff there. That's really, GPT's your friend on that one. So setting up the automation, we could set up the page rules, you could set up the DNS, everything can be done. And then I think the biggest part that nobody talks about is automating the diagnostics. So one thing we're doing is we have a couple of webhooks that we send, we trigger them off. And then what we'll do is we'll get all the email inbounds, and we'll have, AWS SES. We'll have a couple of other inbound webhooks that are actually checking to see if these domains all pass. So we check those every week, just religiously. Like, you have to put the systems in there that you have to take out the human factor of it. People make mistakes, right? You have to kind of assume that in your organization. The best thing to do is set up a lot of triggers, schedules, things like that you can actually have those triggers going and checking those records every week. You don't want to be responsible, and DKIM is getting a lot harder to actually turn on. So hopefully that was a good overview of some of the things we do for automation.
100%. That's the level of depth that we love. Jesse, I want to jump in and sort of dial it up on the technical side for all the techie nerds over here. We spoke about fingerprinting. We spoke about your technical setup. We spoke about how you buy domains. I have two questions over here. One is, is there a way to maintain static IPs to ensure there's consistent logins? And maybe we'll put that as a second question. The first question is, let's answer what everyone sort of has atop their head right now, which is, How reliable is something like Glock apps or Mail Tester or any of these mail placement tools? And then how much should I depend on those to then define the outcome of my replies or opens or whatever it is?
It's a good check. It's a good check to have in the middle. It's not very expensive, so it's not like something you're going to get. You could put your whole infrastructure through there. It's still pretty cheap. You could also really, I mean, if you're, we have set up a few of these other workspaces. We have a couple of triggers where we're actually emailing a couple inboxes on our own workspace just to see. We have a couple different workspaces that we maintain for people or whatever. So we will check those every now and then. I mean, the biggest thing you really would really like to do though is you want to check against some of these like Mimecast and Proofpoint and some of those. So when we're doing emails, when we run a list, a lot of the times we'll scan the list first to see what the MX records are. A lot of the times, actually, if I see it's Mimecast and like Proofpoint, I almost just say like, this campaign's not going to be that great for your Barracuda, right? Like some of those are going to really determine. I mean, if you really want to know how well your campaign's going to run, just go look at the MX records. I've got a couple of tools that I'm going to be pushing out here, allow you to scan all of the MX records of everything. Obviously, a lot of email validation tools have that, but got a couple other things we're doing there. But I think it's critical to understand, like, if you take a new client on and you go look at their MX records, and what that is the mail server, the DNS records, if you see that it's not Google and Microsoft, you could have a problem, right? I mean, the Fortune 500, you have to send incredibly low amounts of email, and if you start scaling that up too fast, or you email the same company, a lot of those things get phoned home, and then the whole network blocks you, and it can happen in a minute, right? You hit Coca-Cola a couple of times with a couple of cold emails, right? Legal emails, right, that you're sending. That thing that if they're running on Mime, I think it's Proofpoint actually, but if you look at the Fortune 500, go scan all of the domains of Fortune 500. They're all running. None of them are running Google and Microsoft just alone. You look at them all, and that's your telltale sign you're gonna have some problems here. So this is why email has certain areas that it does a lot better.
Makes sense. Okay. Now, then I want to dive into the second one. Obviously, which makes sense, right? On a company level, you want a message, Coca-Cola, Amatil is going to block you, then boom, you're out of it straight away. You've spoken about Barracuda, we've spoken about a few other blacklists. Is there anything particularly blacklist-wise people need to be aware of? Anything's what are the main blacklists we need to look forward to? But we need to be wary of. And second, how do we de-escalate or get out of these blacklists? Is there a certain process we can to appeal away to come out of it?
Yeah, so the blacklists are interesting. The real thing you got to look for is when your IP is on there, you probably shouldn't worry about it, right? If you're using Google or Microsoft, you're really going to have the same shared IP, right? Everyone kind of has the same one. You probably could argue, nobody really knows this, but you probably could argue a lot of the resellers are probably on their own tier. Now, it could be good or bad, right? They know pretty well where they're putting people, right? So you're matched up. They put you somewhere. There's a couple of ones that are just sort of blocking Google in general, and that sort of confuses people a lot. Blacklists tend to confuse people a lot. There's another one that a lot of people get caught up with, which is like there's one that's like it's like, hey, you have a new domain. Yeah, of course, right? So people freak out, and then they say like, Namecheap. But I can't believe I bought these cheap domains, the company Namecheap. But in reality, Namecheap actually has great, like we buy most of our domains from there. It's not really an issue. So I think that you just got to be careful on the the blacklist, because those can trigger a lot of false positive, false negatives. You got to first understand if it's an IP block. If it's an IP block, there's nothing you're going to really be able to do if you're on Google or Microsoft, right?
Can I jump in and ask, how can I figure out if it's an IP block or not?
When you go into the actual set in the actual blacklist, a lot of the times it'll tell you it's IP that's blocked. And if you look up that IP address, you can just do like a DNS lookup, what's my DNS.net or something. You go there and you can just see who owns that IP. If it's a Google IP address, it's not that it would like sometimes they pair it up. They say this IP in this domain. But if you're like, it's this IP, I mean, the IP isn't going to really matter. It's the domain then at that point, right? And look, the real spam filters, this is what like anybody will tell you, you don't know what they think of you, right? They're never going to tell you. They're cryptic about it.
Yep.
They did do a quick update on the Postmaster, which was refreshing because that UI looked like it came out of the 90s or whatever. But it's they did some updates there, and it's a little bit better, but it's still only like, did you accidentally email some Gmail account or something? But you got to be careful there, because a lot of the times with these, with these, like, you'll think something's wrong, but then when you go and invest, 9 out of 10 times when I investigated on something, I'll find out that it was like something sort of basic, like a human error,
Yeah,
even on my
human.
own.
Fair enough. Fair enough. On the note of blacklists, since we're over here, Michael, we'll get your question answered, but I know it's a blacklist, black box, or if it's not a black box, it's you know this better than most of us. How do domains get blacklisted and get tracked as a blacklisted domain or IP in the first place? What's the bubbling effect?
There's a few reputable Spam House, Composite. There's a few of these like that are out there.
Yep.
Then there's some that are more domain focused. So the first
Yep.
thing you need to understand is it a domain focused or is it an IP focused? If it's an IP focused blacklist, you're kind of in the boat, right? It's not going to be a big deal. Probably won't matter because it's Google, right? If you're sending with Google, you're not going to have to worry about it. Now, if it's like maybe like a different tier of Google, or you're doing something else there could be some reseller IP ranges. Who knows, right? That's sort of something you're not really privy to. But like I said, the real blacklist that you're going to see is either you're on a domain blacklist, which a lot of the times is this, what is it, Serbial or whatever. Those ones do a lot more domain blacklisting. And if you land on that, or you land on like one of these like Barracuda, Mimecast, any of these other ones, these are the ones that sort of they don't really tell you. The good ones aren't telling you whose domains are blocked, right? They're sort of storing it in their own. They don't want you to know. They want you to keep sending, and they don't want you to go reset your domains and send more, right? So it's better if you don't, right? I think that's going to be one of the challenges moving forward, is that it's going to be less obvious if you're on spam or not. It's sort of, I'd compare it to like the famous, shadow banning on like social media, right? It's sort of like you're sending messages out, nobody's engaging, but you don't really know that you're blocked, right? There's probably some of that going on. It sounded like there was some of that on Twitter or whatever, but that sort of stuff is what spam filters are like today.
Okay, fair enough. And if you were to start onboarding a client right now, sorry, Swapna, if I took over, I'm just gonna run one quick question. Okay. If you were to onboard a client right now and they said, I specifically want to email Fortune 5000, what would your setup look like? Can you walk me through the makeup of from the point
Yeah.
of buying a domain to warming up to everything? If you can just give that, and we can use that maybe as a tail question because I know we're at 1:30. I mean, we passed half an hour already, so we'd love that.
Yeah, I think what I would do first is I would start out by, I would be buying the domains. You could probably buy them from GoDaddy or Namecheap. It really doesn't matter there. And then if you're thinking the Fortune, most likely they're going to be using a lot of legacy sort of Microsoft Exchange. They kind of transition to what they call Microsoft or the Office 365, which probably a lot of you use. So you'd probably want to put a lot more over there, maybe a 70-30 split, right? You could do that. Obviously, being inside the email system that you're emailing to, if you have a favorable reputation, will give you a higher deliverability because they have more attributes on you to know if you're spamming or not. They know a lot more about you. They have your login. They have your other, they have a lot more information. So they're going to naturally favor that model. So that's the first thing. I would register the domains, and then I would set them up probably on Office, right? A majority of them. Then I would get them warming up. Now, there's a little bit of back and forth. We've been testing even a little bit, and there's somebody else that's testing even deeper that we talk to a lot on the warm up. If actually you need that like 2-week period, a lot of the times it's been 2 weeks. We always challenge our assumptions here, but we're seeing that it's less of a priority to have these 2-week, although we haven't totally confirmed it on the other side with the does it matter 3 months out, right? So there's some early data that shows that maybe it isn't as important to warm up like right away and do it 2 week. You might be able to get by with a little bit shorter. However, it's always going to come down to like, there's always, I mean, we're doing some like control testing on this. So that's another thing that's sort of interesting that we're seeing. We're having pretty high success rate on email campaigns that we just start right away without the warm up, going.
Okay.
It's more about that. If you know it's going to be a clean, I think where you could get yourself into double trouble though is if you go out and you run a bad campaign, because now you might have a harder time coming back from it, right? But if you relatively know the offer's good and you get to one of those clients, you don't have to, like some of these clients you'll go out with, like you'll get them and it'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do this. Like, this is going to get so bad. We'll get 300-400 no's in like the first, hour. And you're just like, I gotta go. Bye. Like it's just one of those things that, I'm sure
Yeah,
you've seen it
yeah,
too. But.
yeah. Okay, fair enough. What I want to pick your brain on is the transition, or you said the importance of moving the DNS from one provider to Cloudflare. Any particular reason for that transfer of, the name servers?
Yep.
Why buy on one, move to the other?
So I would not buy. So just to be clear, I would not. I don't. We've made the mistake. I don't think buying the domains from Cloudflare, but I think the DNS works really well there. The reason why we really like it is the biggest reason is around these page rules are really, really helpful, and it's free. So you essentially can load up a lot with these page rules, right? They're a lot more powerful than you really understand. You could set up forwarding, you could set up UTM parameters. They allow you to stay really agile, and their API is extremely well documented, right? Now, the one downside, you probably don't want to register domains there, but you can't register domains from there. If you could, you might deal with the fact that it's hard to get domains out of Cloudflare, and I understand why they do that. It does make sense security wise, but still a little bit of a lock-in. It's sort of hard to get domains out of Cloudflare is the problem. There's no real, it's a little bit of a problem actually. But the other thing that I think is fine to do is you can go on like Namecheap, you can register them using like their beast mode or whatever, the thing that generates all the emails for you or the domain names, and then you can just point them right at Cloudflare. Now, one of the automation tricks we use, Namecheap does allow you to buy them via API. So one of the things we look for when we're looking at providers is, what is their API? How is it documented? Do they support it? Now, GoDaddy is an interesting one, because if you buy on GoDaddy with automation, you have to deposit you have to do like a wire transfer. It's like one of those, like you have to call your bank. It's just a real pain in the ass. So I don't, but Namecheap is a little bit of a different story. You're allowed to you just deposit, you put money in there with a credit card and do it normal business operations, and then you could do it. The weird thing about Namecheap is their API sucks. It has it's just like it's a very old API that they clearly haven't updated, but it does allow you to buy the domains, and it's a little error prone, so you can run into issues, and sometimes weird when you're buying stuff over API. You can kind of get yourself into, oh shoot, you bought the wrong domain name or whatever. But it does work, and it's, the domains aren't really that expensive, so it's not that big of a deal. But it does allow you to change all the DNS records to Cloudflare immediately after you buy them, which is what I would recommend doing.
Awesome. So in the interest of time, because we also want to open up the stage for some questions for people to ask, just one last question to end this part of the segment. I want to ask you, could you just tell us about some new overall trends that you are observing in terms of the deliverability space, and what should people be avoiding right now? It could be syntax, it could be things, it could be anything we should know or should not know of, right?
So one of the biggest ones, there's two big ones that I'd say. One of the biggest ones is people are still using open rates, and there's no open rates aren't I don't want to be an alarmist and say there's a real true reason that you're going to go to spam because of the open pixel. But I mean, reality is you probably do have a higher chance, right? If they pick up on the signature of the pixel, they could probably possibly block you. But the real reason that you probably don't want to use open rates is the opportunity cost. And if you use any of the major sort of like popular sequencers, or Smartlead obviously is the one. But basically being able to use those, you're missing out on plain text mode. Okay. And this is where you got to kind of, it's hard because you will have clients that possibly will freak out because they can't see their open rate, and then they'll blame you if the campaign goes wrong. So you have to sort of command that. You look, we're the experts. We kind of know what we're doing. You hired us for a reason. Hopefully, it might not work. You might lose the battle, but try not to lose it, because plain text is actually the single greatest thing that we did to improve our reply rates. Now it's a setting. It's I think they hide it for a reason. I don't know. You guys should put it right now. I'm just kidding. It's right in there. But if you turn it on, it really dramatically changes your campaign, because walking through TSA with a big open track, walking through like the airport security with drugs and guns and things like that, you're going to get caught, right? Like that's just the way it is. It's the same thing with these open rates. Like it's a similar situation, right? You're going through like a pixel, like you've got a link tracker, like that's kind of obvious. A big goofy signature with your kids on it, that stuff just like it's just not really meant for cold email, right? You're probably better off. What you're better off doing is turning it off, plain text, and you'll see the difference pretty quickly. Try it. Trust me on that one. That's one of the ones. The other one I would be careful of, there's a lot of people looking to save $2 to $3, and I think they're looking for the wrong spots. I think data is probably a better area to go to save money if you're trying to do that, and operations there. So, look at what we're doing over at Lead Magic. You can get a free account, get 1,000 validations for free right now. So check that out. But the biggest problem I see is people are buying a lot of reseller. And I've actually been offered a lot from resellers. Like I have, they're trying to, obviously have me talk about how successful it is with their products. But what you're seeing on these resellers are every one of them has a little bit of a different tier on Google. And all it takes is one panel to go crazy on there, and Google is now targeting some of the resellers, right? Now, I'm not sure if the resellers will agree with this, but I've seen this happen where people have collapsed their business overnight. And I think operational security, things like that, but like knowing that one choke point isn't going to take down your entire monthly revenue and stop paying your bill, being able to stop paying your bills, like on everything. You do have to take this serious. You have to be very careful. You're buying these low cost inboxes. You might be buying them in the wrong spots. And then I'd probably say there is an opposite of that. There's probably the ones that you could get that might actually be enterprise agreements where maybe you're not spending enough, right? I know there's a couple of, I won't name the one that I'm thinking of right now, but yeah, well, I'm not going to name it. I don't want to get in trouble here, but there was one that was going out to market, and then they would go out and give everybody their inboxes, and they spin up thousands of these things, and then their service would shut down for 3 months, and then people would complain. Of course, people complain in my community groups that I'm in and things like that. And I just called them out one time, and I said, "Hey, I think it's kind of lame that you're selling this product because it's never going to work." It's just a bad business model for you and your customers. And you're going to be fighting people with refunds. He didn't really like that, so he had a different opinion. He ended up leaving, crying about it. But anyways, point is that I think you got to be careful of some of this distribution reseller inbox stuff. It's nice to have the support agreement, because then you can call Google and really get after it, make sure you get your inboxes back, whatever happens. So that's another one, Microsoft, Google, whatever. Just be careful of some of these resellers.
Awesome. That's actually a good insight. Take note of. Cool. Folks, we're gonna open the floor for you to ask questions to Jesse, and David already knows what to do.
David knows what to do.
But for everybody who doesn't, please just raise your hands using the reactions tab on the bottom right corner. Raise your hands. We're going to spotlight
David.
you. Everybody's going to get a chance to ask Jesse a question. We're going to be taking 10 questions at max. And don't worry, for those who don't get to ask their questions, we're going to be creating a thread on our Slack channel, called Office Hours, where you can drop all your questions and they will be answered. Also, we'll be creating a Slack thread on our channel for you to drop your email IDs. Top 10 winners will win Jesse's email deliverability checklist. So yeah, just look forward to that. Awesome. Cool. Let's start with David. David, I'm going to spotlight you quickly, and yep, shoot.
Sorry to be rude here. Just David for yourself. Just let's try to limit to one question if that's okay. Otherwise, we'll get too crowded. Cheers, man. Thank you. Need to unmute him, Swapnil. 1 second, David. I think ask to unmute.
There we go. Good stuff. Can you hear me all right? Cool.
Yeah, how you doing, Dave?
Jesse, really appreciate it. It's been really useful.
Thank you.
One question that I had was about if there's any use in consistently buying up new domains and new inboxes for myself and my clients. So some of my oldest inboxes are like December. And then we've also been buying up new ones, obviously. To be quite honest, we just bought up the ones from December. Our reply rate has been okay using them, but we've never really made much of a point of continually buying new ones as a safety precaution in case they go wrong. I'm not really too sure where to sit on that, but yeah, I was just wondering if you think there's any use in consistently maybe having a schedule of constantly buying new ones or not.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we've had a lot of clients that like we've either worked with or whatever, and what I would look at is like how good is the reply rate on these campaigns, and if you're over a 5% and you're not getting a lot of the biggest metric you want to look at for this is there's a concept of these. We actually have something where you can monitor it. We actually give it away as a free in our platform. You could set up a webhook to monitor the disconnects. Now, Smartlead has a great way to get the disconnect information, but we have like some special like analytics and reporting on that in our just giving it away for free. Obviously, we try to get people to sort of buy some of the other stuff in our platform, but this is like something we're giving away free to the Smartlead community. But it tells you how many disconnects you've had, and you can kind of look at it by client. And if you see a client get a lot of disconnects, it's probably good to tell them like, hey, we're going to take a pause here. The problem is I always want like a revenue thing there. So it is good to kind of get some of these things in flight. But, we've had a lot of clients that haven't had to ever change a domain name out. And I think if you keep it to that 3, maybe maximum 3, I think that 4th one's going to get bad sequence. That 5th one's really bad. You got to be careful there. Don't do the 5th one anymore. That one's going to get you in trouble. But if you keep it down and you don't go crazy and you're not getting a lot of disconnects, the ones you're getting the disconnects on, more likely to change out the domain names. That's the way I would look at it.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much.
It's the ones you predicted too. That's the fun part. You're like, I bet this one's going to have a problem. And you go look at the disconnects. You're like, yep, it has a problem. Go ahead.
Awesome. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much for that, David. I'm going to remove you from the spotlight. We've got Bojan. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? I hope I am.
Boyan.
Yeah.
My guy. I like this guy.
You need to unmute Boyan.
Yep.
1 second, man.
I'm unmuting you.
There you
go.
What's up, guys? What's up? Happy to
man?
be here. Yeah, what's up, Jesse? What's up, Vibe? Yeah, guys, thanks for all the information. So for context on this question, I'm not doing lead generation for other companies. I'm doing it for myself. We've scaled to like 100,000 emails a month now, and I do it alone. What's like your best practice for inbox management? Because I'm wondering, like, should I be ignoring or should I outsource it, or like, because I do feel like the replies are valuable in like how I then change my copy or anything, or see if it's working for me. But at the same time, it's like I did email marketing because it's like automated, it scales, and it's a bit more asynchronous. So just how do we balance that like asynchronous and scalability with being on top of our email marketing at scale, when you have like 150 inboxes?
Yep. So we've been pretty fortunate on our side just because we've built sort of some of the tooling for this. We built sort of the Slack. Now it's a free thing. So if we get bugs, we always check them, but it's not like our top priority if there's something wrong with it. but we are looking at it, and we do like to keep people in the inbox, so it's something we look at. But I think looking at it this way would be inbox management. You do want to make sure, the biggest thing I see a lot of people do is they stop doing the sentiment analysis for whatever reason. And I think it's critical to do that first, right? And make sure that that's about 98, 99% accurate, right? You want to make sure that's accurate. You want to get that right. We've built a couple custom, every campaign, in our mind has a different way you might want to sentiment. So we are doing sentiment analysis on a campaign level, because I think and I know Smartlead's sort of adding this too, but we're just doing it with our own like webhooks. But we're watching to make sure that we're keeping up with the numbers. Like, we want to see all of our interested responses. We want to make sure that the clients, if they're reading them, they get them. I think that's the biggest part. And then I think that the next biggest part is around the responses. You want to make sure that you're asking for something that's not like, you're not trying to get into like a deep conversation with somebody over email. Like, you'll hear people on, LinkedIn tell you, hey, I want to go start a conversation. I don't think you're not really trying to do that. You're trying to see if they're interested, and you're trying to get them on a call, hopefully, or you're trying to get them to try whatever, maybe it's get your content or whatever your offer is, right? You can do something, event, SEO, whatever it is. But I think you got to have something there. I love to just say, go blow through it and use AI and do it. That's what we're doing, but it doesn't work for everybody, because you do have to have some people sort of maintaining it. You need to test some of that stuff before. We are setting all the meetings with AI now, so it isn't something we're actually physically watching. We just have webhooks that do it. It's not that hard, really. It's just, we'll probably talk about it at some point here in the Smartlead chat. I've talked about it a few times, and we do automate the sending back to them, just because it's really not that hard. And clients sometimes will pay a little bit more, maybe of a premium too, if you can do that. We never do it with a human though. Like, we don't have anybody doing it there. Although for some organizations, if you're not as technical and you're like, just want to run a business, and you just kind of willing to forego that, but you could probably find somebody on Upwork to set up the N8N hooks. I know there's a million Smartlead jobs on Upwork right now. I get the alerts every day for more Smartlead integration stuff, but I think it's a real differentiator for you as an agency if you can get some of this stuff wired up, and then you don't have to hire that person. That cost, that inbox management stuff that's not a cheap role either, right? And really, you're just trying to get the interested replies to set the meeting. It's really not that hard of a GPT prompt, right? Like, hey, if you get a message that looks like this, send them the calendar link and suggest a few times. I mean, it's really not that hard. So I don't know. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think that, if you're already here at the Smartlead level, you probably could figure out a way to get an Upwork person for, I bet it's probably somebody for $15 to $20 an hour that could do this pretty quickly. So work through that. Getting it into Slack might be a little harder, but you can definitely do the subsequencing and all that. We won't get into the nitty gritty there. And if you want to, we can on the chat if you want, but let's go to we'll go to the next one.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vayan. And yep, we're moving on to Suleiman. Are you there? Yep.
You're still muted, mate. I can't hear
Hey,
you.
good meeting you.
Can't hear him, right?
Nope, we can't hear you.
Sorry, mate, we can't hear you. Might be a mic thing. Your little thing at the bottom's not even moving up and down.
Can you check now? I've asked to unmute.
You need to unmute yourself. Nope. Sorry, mate. We can't hear you. While you sort it out, we might just pick the next person, then we'll bring you back on, yeah? Maybe worthwhile just trying another Zoom or something. Cheers.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Let's move on to John. Hey, John.
Yep.
Are you there?
Hey, John.
Hey guys. Yeah, so my question, Jesse, you were talking about not using resellers. So I actually just recently bought about 300 inboxes from I'm not sure if you'd consider him a reseller or what, but I reached out to him and kind of asked for his defense on things. And he said just ask you. He said that you'd recommend him. It's Mo from the SAS Yacht Club chat. Is there a difference between him and like other resellers or
Yeah, so I think I don't want to. So I want to be careful. So resellers aren't really necessarily the problem. What ends up happening is your risk pool goes up a little bit, right? Like obviously, if you don't have direct access to the support team, but maybe resellers can help you navigate it better, right? So there's probably pros and cons of each. Mo, I've actually recommended him before for people, and I've seen he's been a very good partner for people. He's probably one of the only ones that I would on the reseller side. I'm a little careful on this one because here's what happens: like they're as good as until everybody's as good as until they're they lose some domains, right? Now, Mo, I believe, and I don't want to. He could please check with him. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe he has an enterprise agreement with one of the with somebody, and he's working sort of more with their enterprise account team. So that is something to look for a little bit. Now, I'm not an expert here. I'm being honest, and there's probably some great resellers out there that I'm not giving credit to here, and I'm probably doing that. But Mo is, yeah, and I've got a few data points on working with Mo, and a lot of people have been very happy with him. So I can't say anything negative about him. And he's been a very big contributor into the group that I run on WhatsApp called the SAS Yacht Club. He's been just a real, like, you can tell there's something there with him. He's a very, he has a lot of like the things you want in business, like integrity and like, works well with people, trying to help people out, right? Gives a lot before he asks for something in return. But yeah, I like Mo a lot. So if I was going to recommend somebody, I never do on resellers because I don't want to be the guy you call when Jesse, what the hell, man? Because I don't know really. None of us can predict it, so we don't know. But obviously, like it actually can be easier with a guy like Mo because he's servicing some good clients there. But the one I was talking about earlier was not. There's one that's out there that's a little bit shady. I don't want to go there. We'll stay out of that one. But V, if you want to go to the next one, perfect.
Yep.
That's a great question, though, John. I like Mo. Mo, I give thumbs up on Mo.
Awesome. Sulaiman, is your mic issue fixed? Just quickly checking to unmute you.
I think, can you hear me now?
Yep. Adding you to
okay.
Go for it.
I really appreciate, guys. Thank you so much for doing this and sharing a lot of information. So, and I've been following Jesse. Contents are great. Thank you. So my question, I have two questions very quickly. The first one is like about tracking opens and links. So basically, when we start a campaign, we definitely need to track open rates. So we can not.
Sorry, mate. Your internet's dropping, Sulaiman.
Stop. So how do you?
Sorry, mate. Your internet's dropping again. And we didn't hear any of your question. I apologize. Yeah. So what we might do is maybe ask you to drop this on
open rate.
Is your question about open rates?
Yeah, tracking the open rate and click rate. So initially we might have to track those. And how do we then measure the KPIs when we do not track them, open rates and
sure. Okay.
When in terms of tracking the links as well. So how do you recommend?
So Jesse, if I can help summarize, he has no choice but to track open and click rates right now because that's the KPIs he's following. If he can't track those two metrics, what are the other two KPIs, or what do you suggest as an expert on your perspective for him to focus on?
This is a good one. There are clients who will put you in this pickle, where they will essentially put it all on you. What I would do with these clients is I would front end load the deal. And what I mean by that is you've got to get paid up front. And you got to get paid a few months to make sure you're successful. Because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, especially on Click. So click is just a, I mean, like there's nothing worse that you can see through a spam. I mean, if you think about the attack surface of every company, the fastest way I could go and hack your company would be probably calling them on the phone, social engineering, email, something like that. But the email is like right up there. It's definitely the biggest attack surface. And the way to do it is through a link. So that's why it's like you're actually just getting into this like other world of like, and it's not email marketing you're sending unsolicited emails. So it's a real risk for people to click track, like super risk. Like open, you could definitely make an argument for it. The problem is the opportunity costs on open rates. I know Eric has a little bit of a view on this. I disagree with his view, of course, but it's the one where he thinks like, I just want to show a flex that I have such a high open rate. But I think that's a bad flex because you're giving up plain text. So I don't know. But I love Eric though. He's a good dude. So friend of mine. So anyways, I would say turn them off if you can. If you can't, get the money up front, because if they're more concerned about that, it's probably a little bit of a risk. Open rate only, never go click. I'd probably cancel the customer if it was a click. If they forced me to put click on, I wouldn't do it. I would cancel the campaign. Money back and tell them we're not going to be the best agency for you. I mean, that's the simplest way to get rid of customers like that. It works.
I just had to mute you because of that, but I just move on to the next question. So just to add to the, if you can't do opens and clicks, work on replies, work on sentiment, work on amount of emails delivered. Any other metric that you can tag on is what I would suggest. But yeah, Swapnil,
and just educating them. Send them a broadcast. Send them this video clip here. Maybe you could send this to every one of your clients that asked for it, because, I mean, it's just really bad. Clicks are just really bad.
Awesome.
It's cool to know when people click your shit, but it doesn't really matter because it won't work and it's gonna go to spam.
Thanks, Suleiman, for the question. Thank you so much, Jesse. But in interest of time, we've got like just time for one more question. What I've done is I've already created a thread on our Slack channel, office hours. Just drop all your questions there. We'll just answer one more question before we drop off for the day. Just give me a minute, removing you from Spotlight. The next person in the queue is Levi. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Just give me a minute, asking you, unmute you and adding you to Spotlight. Go for it.
Yeah. Hello. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Hey, Jesse. I have so many questions. I'm going to try to I guess ask my most important one right now. So I guess it's also a question to the Smartlead team. So I have a use case where I've done a lot of A/B testing between Smartlead, and it's not really Smartlead. When I say Smartlead, I'm saying any automation software. And manual sendouts. And every single time I do that, manual sendouts win by a mile. So right now, currently, I'm sending out, I don't know, maybe 25,000, 30,000 emails a day, doing it manually. And I wish I could do it through Smartlead. I tried Smartlead once, twice, 3 times. I tried instantly. Again, it's not a Smartlead question. For context, I do use a hyperlink in the first email. Again, I need that for at least for just how it works with my clientele. So I guess the question is, how do I is there a way in to really get it down with Smartlead? Is there something? I mean, I've asked some of the people that really I believe they know what they're doing and just never got it to work. And a second question, I know it's, I just trying to push everything in as much as possible. A lot of people have been talking about like a real dip in the last couple weeks. And whenever this happens, right, there's always a question. Is it the industry? Is it Google? Is it this? Is it that? So as much, like, how do you view these things when it happens, when these dips happen?
Yep. So first question. So when you say man, can I just ask? So when you say manual, what do you mean by just? Are you using like your own webhooks, or are you actually just physically typing it, or?
I have a group. Sure. So I have a group of SDRs in the Philippines, and each one is in charge sending out 1,000 per day, and I just have a whole team just pushing out their 1,000.
So they're like they're basically copy and pasting emails and then pushing them in on like Gmail.
Simple, just copying and pasting.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to compare. I don't know what the cost of that would be compared to. I mean, you could send. There's probably some other things involved there around your sort of size of market, things like that. Like it might be that you couldn't get to certain people. Maybe it all depends. There's so many factors there. Manual sending, I think, I could see why you have reasonable luck there, right? Like I do see that opportunity, but I think operationalizing it does become sort of a burden. And then you also hit on it with the other point of like, hey, email sort of takes a hit every now and then. The filters change, the warm up networks get maybe stunned for, they fall back a little bit. I think that the challenge you're going to run into is you're sort of you kind of, if you're going manual versus it's sort of it becomes even more of a David versus Goliath sort of if you can't get it to work with automation, maybe looking at another channel completely would be another strategy, right? Just because there are a lot of agencies that are doing it very successfully, that have, and sometimes
Can I
like
jump in here if it's okay, Jesse, to sort of complement your question? Again, this is the answer is simple. You probably are getting better results doing manual. And the point is straightforward. When you authenticate a token, you're telling Google that this is an automated email. TLDR, like you're letting the system know that we're sending automated messages. And when you're going through the client, which is what is meant to be and how it's meant to be, you're letting them know that this is actually being sent in the intended behavior. So by nature, they will, and it's expected. Like I will, if I own Gmail, I'll expect you to send better emails by behavior. Not 1,000 a day, that's crazy, but still you can do that great. 1,000 a day on the client will always beat 1,000 a day with any API request. That's just that is how it's meant to be. If it was the other way around, I'd actually be shocked. So that's how it's meant to be. So Gmail is protecting its business.
Got it.
Yeah, it's a good point. It does make sense. I mean, you think about it, right? Like you're using a programmatic layer that it's machine generated versus like the question is like, well, why can't somebody do that? Well, you would be violating, terms and services of Google if you built a robot that did it, right? So they're pretty strict on that. That's something they would crack down on pretty quickly. They're pretty good. They're pretty good with their login screens. Google's really good with their login screens. So
got it. And the second part of my question about like the other two parts were like the hyperlink. Is there any way to really push through a hyperlink successful on the first message? And the second part, the next topic was about like how to view these dips, like because everyone panics when dips, and how do you isolate them?
Okay, so the hyperlink question. So, links are always bad, but let's go to if I had to send links. Okay, great. First message makes it a little worse just because it's an unknown sender. They're not engaging with the email. So if you could get it on the second one, that'd be better. But if we don't have that luxury, then we would want to do a link. Here's what we'd want to do in the link. The link has to go to a reputable website. One of the ones that I do think is okay in a lot of ways is LinkedIn. The smart links that they have. The reason why it's a server-based link, and what I mean by that is it's not changing like when you click on it, it doesn't change and redirect to 5 different websites. It goes directly through and you can share content on LinkedIn. You could also track the people. This is actually even a better LinkedIn tracking. You could use the LinkedIn smart links, they're called. They're in Sales Navigator. You can have the advanced version. It's $169 a month, but that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to host a link, or if you're sort of really good with Cloudflare, you could do some worker rules. There's some stuff you could do there. But beware, obviously links are always a little dangerous. The higher the reputation of the domain name, the more authority that domain has. Probably, one way to look at it is like, look at like SimilarWeb or one of those websites to see what the authority is on that website, right? Like Ahrefs or something like that. You'll know pretty quickly what they're going to think of it. Now, there are some that have high authority that are free that are going to get you in a lot of trouble still, because it means a lot of people are hosting there. So that's another factor. Do a lot of people host on that? Like Google Drive Yeah, they have great. Google has the best authority you can have, right? The best, number one. But if you send out a Google Drive link, you're probably going to get in trouble or something like that. So you have to take that into account. LinkedIn, on the other hand, is not a bad one because not a lot of people know about smart links and they're not sent very much. And you got to pay $169 to get the plan that has it. So that's a couple of ways to do it. Try to get it in the second, third email. That way they've already engaged, or try to use a server side one where you use a rule or a LinkedIn, like something with a high reputation. Hopefully that answers that question there.
Yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Levi. Yeah.
And what about the pen?
Oops. Sorry. You still there? 1 minute. Adding you back to the spotlight. And yep. Sorry. Go for it.
What was the question?
No, sorry. I'm saying how do you address the panic that many people face?
Oh yeah, sorry, the panic thing. So this happens a lot in SEO too, right? Like this is sort of a pretty well known thing in the marketing world, anyways. But what I always say is don't always buy whenever there's a new topic or new, like everyone's like something's dead or something like that. I'm always like, is it really? So I always look at it. I'm always like, is it really impacting me? Let me really look. I think the best thing to do is do an audit, right? Like look at the number of emails that you're sending, look at the number of emails that are getting replies, look at the number of emails that are getting bounces, look at the number of interested, have that reporting available. So when that stuff does happen, you can say like, am I getting caught up in this? And I've gotten caught up in it. Some people say I've actually done some fear mongering, and I haven't intentionally, I swear. But there's been times where I've been called out on this too. Like, and I try not to. Like, it's not my goal, but I know there's situations like, I mean, everybody could see the Outreach sales off crash. I mean, those guys are, I'm sorry. For anybody on here that likes those two products, like, it's gonna be darker days for those two companies because nobody can get through using those products. They don't seem to work. And that's what the reviews say. But the point is that, like, check the data first. The reporting is key. Always get your number of sent, number of replies. Those are like the two big ones, right? And then the number of interested, bounced, then the other sentiment that you want to have in there. But like, if you have those core metrics, you should be able to tell pretty quickly if it's hype or not, or it might not be impacting you, but it might be, like keep that, like you should always know when it comes up, just ignore the noise a lot of the time there. But there are times when I've looked at it, I'm like, man, is something really going on here? And, time to time, we have changed out inboxes, domains, things like that. Things like that can help. Taking a step back, maybe letting the account stop for a second, do warm up again, kicking it back off, like stuff like that can help. Register new domains, buy another org account, do something like that. One of those things could help. Happens a lot with SEO too.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
And the LinkedIn algorithm, if you make posts on LinkedIn or like any other sort of social media, they kind of control you. But emails is the risk on email is a different type of risk. So I'll leave it there.
So your bet is on Easter, not on Google right now, for the dip that everyone is seeing.
Levi, I apologize, but we've probably got to call it on this. We've just got a whole bunch of stuff. Thank you, but I will say the dip is definitely on Easter. Like market sentiment changes. And just for your context, before Easter was spring break, right? Like 9th April, if this still happens, then give it a crack. Guess what? Right after this, you're gonna have the same issue happen in July again when 4th of July comes in place. Then it's going to be something else in October. So this is just how the world works. This is not just email. This is paid ads. This is everything, right? So it's just that it's a lot more reactive. And I get your bread and butter is affected, but trust me, we feel the hit everywhere. It's not just you. It's all across the market. You can't do much. You just need to tell your clients, like, I can't force people to come back to the office. Just give it till the 9th of April. Things can be back on.
Imagine if you were running Facebook ads and you lost access to their pixel overnight, right? Like that's a big deal, right? You're fortunate right now that it's still not as bad as it could be. It could be a lot worse, right? They could be blocking open trackers. They could be blocking a lot of other things that you don't even really think about, right? So let's not go there. But anyways.
Darius, sorry, we can't reassign the host so you can stay on and talk. I appreciate the sentiment, but we run these every week. Swapnil, I'll let you run ending comments.
No, so Jesse, thank you so much for this. Before we end, folks, I've already created a thread for anybody who's not able to ask their questions to Jesse. I've already created a thread on our Slack channel. For anybody who's curious as to the recording, it will be shared tomorrow on our Slack channel exclusively and will be up on our YouTube. So in case you joined late and you missed it, don't worry, we've got it covered. And thank you so much for this, Jesse. Again, dropping, gold everywhere you go. And yeah, with that, we're going to be dropping before we leave, there's going to be another thread that's going to be popping up in the next, actually by now, on our Slack channel. Drop your emails there. 10 lucky winners get Jesse's email deliverability checklist.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Especially Smartlead, you guys put on a great show, and you guys have been a great partner, and everything that I've worked with you guys on. Thank you. Swapnil, great job setting this up, and helping us here get back on to the primary inbox. Appreciate it.
Let's go back.
Cheers, sir. Thank you all.
You guys have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
Easy.